Good afternoon and welcome to the People's Verdict. This is the People's Program where we continue to interact with you, our dear viewers, and of course we bring the guests to discuss pertinent issues pertaining to governance matters. And this day has been set aside to discuss a rare topic on Kamne TV, which is environmental protection and conservation. As you already know, Zambia will be commemorating World Environmental Day, and which falls on the 5th of June every year, but this event will be marked on the 60th locally here in Zambia because it falls on a Sunday where Zambians have to go to church, being a Christian nation, and so this day has been pushed to Monday, which is the 60th of June. And you, our dear viewers, later on will call on you to interact with us in the studio by giving us your perspective on these issues that we'll be talking about. In the studios, I've been joined by a delegation from the Ministry of Green Environment, and from the Ministry of Green Environment, rather, where we have Mr. Chibabula Sirwamba. He's the Communication Officer from the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, rather. And we also have Mr. FISHANI GONDWE, the Director, Environment Management Department at the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. This is the new ministry that is focusing particularly on the green aspect. We have been having this ministry, but it has evolved under the UPND administration. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, viewers.
We are happy that you could find time to discuss with us these pertinent issues pertaining to the issues that have to do with the environment.
Thank you for having us, and we hope to interact very well.
Well, before we just get our discussion going, we'll just go on a short break, then we'll be back on the other side. Just stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Deborah Lukalu, all the way from South Africa. You are watching Kamne channel, not just another channel. God bless you. Stay tuned. We testify. We celebrate. For all you've done, Lord, we give you all the praise. Oh, we testify. We celebrate. Oh, for all you've done, Lord, we give you all the praise.
Welcome back. You are watching the People's Verdict, and in conversation I have people from the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, and Mr. Sirwamba. We get our conversation going now. Just give us a brief background of the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. Why green economy? Why did you have to rebase in that fashion, and what do you stand for now?
Thank you very much, Mr. Soko, for this opportunity. To start with, as to give the history of this ministry, you may appreciate that a number of departments that are part of Ministry of Green Economy and Environment were in other ministries. However, when His Excellency President Hakainde Hichilema was elected into office in August 2021, during his address to the National Assembly and the Parliament, he announced the creation of this new ministry called Ministry of Green Economy and Environment in September 2021. There have been conversations about issues to do with green economy, I think from way back. Maybe to just give an illustration. From around 1992, during the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, there were conversations about how do we best ensure that our development agenda also takes into consideration environmental aspects as well as social aspects, to ensure that as we develop economically, we do not negatively impact the environment. That is linked to conversations that many viewers might be conversant with of sustainable development, ensuring that our development is sustainable for the benefit of the current generation and future generations. So when the president formed the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, it was in recognition of the importance of us ensuring that as we develop, we have at the back of our mind the need for us to consider the interests of future generations, to consider the interests of protection of the environment as we push our socio-economic development agenda. So, as I indicated earlier, a number of departments were put from other existing ministries. For instance, the ministry, the Department of Environment Management, which Director GONDWE is heading, was part of Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Environmental Protection. And that was brought under Ministry of Green Economy and Environment because that's the thrust of this ministry. And Director GONDWE will speak further about what his department deals with. Suffice it to also mention that we have the department called Green Economy and Climate Change. Initially, it was called Climate Change section, which was part of a department in the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. So it was Climate Change and Natural Resources. So that component of climate change was brought to Ministry of Green Economy, and there's a section to do with green economy. So it's a Department of Green Economy and Climate Change, primarily to ensure that we streamline issues to do with greening our economy in all our development activities, and also to address the challenges of climate change, adaptation and mitigation. Under us, we also have the Department of Zambia Meteorological Department, which I think many of you fully know. It provides information about the weather, climatic changes, which are very cardinal in our agricultural activities, in the aviation sector, in our construction, name it. In our day-to-day lives, we depend on information to do with the weather. So that particular department, because of its critical role in addressing the issues of climate, as well as attending to greening our economy, to the protection of the environment, it also came to the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. It used to be previously part of the Ministry of Communications. Yes. We also have, those are the key technical departments, but we also have statutory bodies. For instance, the Zambia Environmental Management Agency, ZEMA, which is very paramount in addressing environmental challenges and also providing the regulations, guiding, ensuring that there's no pollution and the like, name them. And so that becomes very fundamental in us realizing our green agenda. We also have the National Biosafety Authority, which is also very cardinal in addressing these challenges. So we also have other departments that also support for us to be able to realize our objective of the ministry.
So interesting. Quite an elaborate response there. And we just want to also get you, Director GONDWE. We see that you are under the environmental management component there. What do you do? What is the responsibility, especially of your department there?
Thank you very much for that question. Maybe I begin by unpacking the why green.
Yes.
Because you asked that question, and people out there might need to understand why the term green. This term was adopted to signify clean activities. Clean activities associated with green, because when we look at our vegetation on Earth, that green vegetation has a role to play in cleaning our environment. So the air we breathe, the carbon dioxide is removed, changed to oxygen and given back to us. So the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment was so coined so that we emphasize that part. Following an economic pathway that ensures that there's a very low carbon footprint, there is very minimal waste being generated, and there is efficiency in the use of natural resources. And above all, there is very big interest on the health of the people. So that's why that ministry has been created to champion that pathway. I am heading a Department of Environment Management. This department has been in existence since 2003. And our role is to deal with two aspects, broad aspects of the environment. One is called the green environment side, where you're talking about the conservation issues and so on and so forth, both for the animal and the plant matter. Then the other one is the brown issues, where we deal with the pollution. So these two, when we start going very much in detail, you see that there's so much that we can do because the environment is cast along those two lines.
Interesting. Now, talking about another component that we have, we'll be discussing the World Environment Day. What is the significance of this day in our calendar, especially when it comes to environmental conservation and protection?
Thank you so much. First of all, this day is a United Nations Day, and Zambia is a member of the UN, which also is supposed to implement all the obligations of the UN. So the World Environment Day again talks about something very, very topical to the health of a human being at individual level, community, you name it. That makes this day very, very significant for us, because already we know that there are certain things that are happening in our environment which are affecting all of us. Climate change is one of them. It results from what our activities are on land. What we do release certain chemicals, gaseous forms, and which are famously known as greenhouse gases, that entail what kind of a climate we shall have. And already we are seeing that there is variability. Where we don't expect storms, they arise. And where we don't expect droughts, they arise. And that has a telling effect on the entire economy. That makes the World Environment Day very significant for Zambia to commemorate.
Interesting. Your perspective, Mr. Srwamba?
Yes, as the Director Gondwe has indicated, this day brings about the awareness, as well as it reminds us of our responsibility as a people to attend to environmental challenges, to think about our day-to-day activities and how they negatively impact on the environment, and how we can reverse some of those day-to-day activities we undertake that have huge detrimental effect on our environment within a long term, within a short to medium long term. So it's an opportunity for us to realize our role as to how best we can coexist with nature for the greater good of ourselves and indeed future generations. Posterity will have to look at us to have been people who are very considerate in whatever we do to ensure that we are leaving this world better than we found it.
From a Zambian perspective, where is this activity going to be held from, and what are some of the issues have you lined up to focus on the World Environmental Day, Director?
Thank you so much. I was looking at him. Yes, for the Zambia commemoration, we have picked Mumbwa district, and particularly Mumbwa Secondary School. That's where, but the audience might also want to know that this is not, the activities are not lined up for only one day. We have lined up activities for the entire week, which is culminating into Monday. So there is a symposium which is lined up, and then there will be dialogues like we are doing, TV, radio programs, they are there. But on the day itself, there will be speeches, there will be dramas, there will be march past, and that kind of activity which is lined up. So the public is expected to see a full-fledged set of activities.
Interesting.
If I may also add to what Director Gondwe has indicated, on that particular day, what we've also done is that instead of limiting this event to Mumbwa, we are also going to have it syndicated on various radio stations across the country, so that people across the country are able to follow the proceedings and appreciate the messages that are going to come from our leaders, environmental activists, and other players in safeguarding the environment. So we're trying to provide an opportunity for each and every Zambian to appreciate what the government is doing, working with various stakeholders to address the challenges of climate change.
But Mr. Swamba, why have you not put television stations like Camnet TV there?
Surely we're trying by all means to ensure that we embrace as many media outlets as possible, and of course for Camnet TV we're here. We're very grateful for this platform you have given us, and I'm sure, as Director Gondwe has indicated, we have a number of activities that we're going to carry out. As you know, issues to do with climate change are not restricted to the World Environment Day only. This is an ongoing activity, raising awareness, making people realize the importance and the role they can play. And therefore, stations like Camnet TV with huge viewership, we would like to tap into that opportunity and engage you, and I'm sure after this we'll have more conversations with yourselves and the leadership and management of Camnet TV to see how we can work together. As the ministry, you may realize that the Honorable Minister of Green Economy and Environment, Honorable Colin Zovlu, and the Permanent Secretary, Mr. John Sumuku, have been very categorical that as a ministry, we are new and the issues that we're dealing with are cross-cutting, and therefore we have to engage all media houses and all other platforms, be it traditional media, new media, to ensure that we reach out to as many people as possible. We deliver our message to as many people as possible. Therefore, Camnet TV should be assured that we'll be knocking on your doors to see how we can closely cooperate.
Interesting. Now, I want to bring you to specifics now. I'm going to take you out of your comfort zone now, because these are matters that have been trending, especially in Zambia. When you talk about timber, the timber sector has been topical of late. And when we talk about adding value to timber and also cultivating timber, we are also looking at the issue of environmental degradation, where our forest cover continues to be depleted. And just to get your perspective as a ministry director, what are you doing to ensure that while you are issuing these licenses, there's also a sustainable component to ensure that while these people are benefiting from the timber, we are also conserving the environment for future generations?
Thank you very much for that interesting question. I can assure you the work has been in progress to address such a situation. We know that the rate of deforestation in this country has been quite high, and with that we've been losing quite important species of timber trees. To begin with, when this new ministry was created,
yes,
it was created with a refocusing of mandate. So under forestry, the ministry has been working to develop a charcoal strategy. And in that strategy, there is a great thinking of how we can manage our resource. We are falling back on some old ideas that were working before, but somehow we slipped. The way the forest estate is supposed to be managed is you have to subdivide it into areas according to how the lifespan of that forest area can sustain you. Okay? So an area subdivided for you to cut this year, and the next year you leave it to grow. You cut another one, it grows, and so on and so forth. That is what was called a coup system. Okay? Then with the advent of new technologies, okay, people are used to having the common imbabula, which burns a lot of charcoal for you to get a little energy.
Yes.
But now more technologies are coming up, okay, which are very efficient at use of charcoal, and we can even go even beyond, instead of charcoal, just twigs. So you could have seen such technologies coming on the surface. The problem we've had is the absorption of such technologies by our people.
Exactly.
But we have such ideas. So beginning with a strategy, then we link into the technologies, and even the activities in the forest need to be regulated and enforced at that level, so that we do not have unscrupulous people coming into the forest anytime they want to, but we can have that control. If you remember, at one time, people used to fear Kapenda Maulas because we had a cadre of foresters, which were called forest guards. Their office was the forest, so you would find them there. But now we don't have those anymore. Now with this government, we have started redeploying, employing and redeploying forest guards. Slowly, but we'll get there.
Interesting. Mr. Chiwaba.
Yes. Yeah, just to add on what Director Gondwe has indicated, indeed we are losing a forest cover, which is quite concerning, and this has concerned the leadership of the ministry, and indeed at high level. You will recall that His Excellency the President, when he addressed Parliament during his last address, the issues of forests were among top on his agenda, and he implored all of us Zambians to ensure that we participate in tree planting, realizing the value that these trees have to our well-being. So you could see the commitment that the leadership is bringing about to ensure that we address this challenge which is negatively affecting us.
There has been a challenge, for instance, by some stakeholders who are passionate about the environment, that if you are committed under this administration to address deforestation or even mitigate climate change, why doesn't the president then move with a tree and wherever is going to plant a tree? Or even your Minister of Green Economy. People have been challenging us on this platform, Mr. Siwamba there and Director Gondwe, that tell the ministry to be doing this, because people will be emulating the idea and start planting trees and taking care of these trees.
I am sure that there are some programs you've seen us. What a blackout.
Oh, we testify, we celebrate.
Hello, I'm Deborah Lukalu, all the way from South Africa. You are watching Camnet channel, not just another channel. God bless you. Stay
We
tuned.
testify, we celebrate. For all you've done, Lord, we give you all the praise. Oh, we testify, we celebrate. Oh, Lord, we give you all the praise.
We are still on. So show me the studio that is
okay.
Well, we apologize for that breaking transmission. This was due to our taking something that was beyond our control. It was a technical fault, and we were just talking about green, and Zesco was actually on our case. This is the challenge we have, and now it's true that we have few people from the Ministry of Green Economy. We depend highly on hydropower, and even us here at Camera TV, we are powered by Zesco Power. And if you talk about this area, IBEX, we stay without power for the entire day, and you just witnessed that yourselves. What are you doing about it, especially when it comes to promoting alternative sources of energy beyond hydroelectricity?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Soko. Yes, of course, I think this is a reawakening call to all of us that indeed electricity is very key for us to be able to realize our development agenda, and hydropower has been the main source of electricity for us. However, with the new thinking now, there is consideration to look at alternative sources of energy, including but not limited to solar power, name it. And of course, it is imperative for all of us as the business entities, in our individual capacities, to consider using these alternatives. For instance, solar power. It will go a long way, because in one breath is helping you to do your business without interruptions, and it's also helping us as a people to green our economy, to green our lives, to ensure our well-being, and in the same vein also attending to our other needs. So it's a wake-up call that all of us should realize that it's not only hydro which can provide us electricity or that energy that we need. So it's an opportunity, it's an investment opportunity, if I were to mention that.
The president did mention incentives, especially on the importation of solar products under the 2022 national budget, which was presented by Dr. Msokotwani. But how are you making sure, as an institution, that such a pronouncement achieve their purposes, especially on the ground, in terms of ensuring that the prices of solar products are coming at a cheaper price in the country? The benefit is also transferred to the consumers, because these people may not be conforming to what you want to achieve as the government.
Well, on that one, it's a nest of complications. It's economic dynamism.
Yes.
Yes. So it might not just rest on our ministry. Ours is to promote, but we know that there are also, this is a democratic country.
Yes.
So there are also the roles of civil society. There are other organizations that need to keep the checks and the balances on this. So we wouldn't provide that straightforward answer right now, but to look at all the parameters that cause things to spiral and so on and so forth. So for now, what we can simply stress is, yes, there is a good array of other alternatives which are there, but it's a question of the individual entrepreneur to see how best they bring those in, because they need to follow through on the pronouncements that have done by the head of state or the Minister of Finance. So that is something to champion by the entrepreneur. But then also the consumer should be interested to see that they are getting what the government has given them as an incentive.
Interesting. We were talking about the timber sector, Director, before we had that interruption, and we're talking about charcoal, and us are looking at beyond charcoal. I'm aware that the ministry and other stakeholders has been also talking about alternatives to charcoal. Now, talking about alternatives to charcoal, I want to find out which one are you prioritizing in terms of promotion, especially you, Director, well, Mr. Sirwamba, you have a responsibility to market this initiative. But we look at alternatives to charcoal. For example, we have the fire brigade, the brigades, yes, we have those. We also have the gas stoves. But the subject about charcoal has been the issue of convenience. Where I have to, I go, my neighbor sells charcoal. Just near across there, someone has charcoal. But for me to get gas, I need to go to a filling station, probably go to a specific vendor who is trading in that. So, but how are we going to address the issue of convenience? Because we have to strike a balance on the usage of charcoal as well.
Understand?
I can start, but Director Gondwe will finish it off. Yeah. So, as you have rightly pointed out, I think the issues of accessibility, affordability, and indeed availability of charcoal and lack thereof play a bigger role. And in the conversations that we are having as a ministry with other stakeholders, including but not limited to, for instance, the Alternatives to Charcoal project under the USAID, we recently had what was called the Forest Endeavor, where via C4, WWF, and other stakeholders, and also other players generally came to have a conversation around these issues, how we can sustainably use the forest, and the aspect of charcoal, sustainable production, trading, and consumption of charcoal was very key on the agenda. And of course, the issue that came out of that meeting was that we need to find these alternatives that can be easily accessible, as you indicated, next door or immediately come out of your house. As you go to the street, you can find charcoal. It should be affordable because, as you have rightly noted, charcoal is very cheap. It's a Pamela package. You can buy that. So how do you make this? So all those dynamics, if they're put in place, it will be easier for people to quickly switch. And also the mindset. Of course, there are others who have argued that there are people who believe that a shima cooked on mbaola with charcoal is better. So it's also these dynamics of reasoning, the mindset. There are also people who feel, for instance, gas is very dangerous. But in many parts of the world, they use gas. And it's all about people realizing that this could be a good alternative with less damage or less cost and things like so. We can look at those dynamics, and I think those are the conversations that the ministry is having with other stakeholders. But Director,
thank you very much. Apart from the mindset issues, I'll approach it from the quantities point of view, and I'll use this analog. If there is plenty of food in the home, okay, you can nimble on this, nimble on that one, and so on and so forth, and everybody's happy. All right. Now, let's look at the power pool that we have. It's not sufficient for all the activities that we must undertake. And Zambia's economy is growing. Okay? So many heavy-duty industries coming up, and they all need that power. The question is, are we not able to generate more? So that is where the problem is. If we all just focus on hydro, the limitations kick in. Then we should look at other alternatives that will support this electricity. Is a very, very good power source. And if we have plenty of it, then you will light everybody. You will power anything. Yes, that's why we are saying solar is one focus. Look at the whole country, Zambia. The sun rises from morning, sets in the evening, very bright. There are countries in this world where this is a very, very scarce commodity. And we have plenty of land where we can put these panels. They will support. But more so, there are also other technologies that can be brought in. I don't want to go into the detail of nuclear power, which is so powerful, but it will excite other people and then bring in other discussions. So the whole point I'm driving at is, let's have sufficient electricity that will drop down the costs, and anyone can access and have it, because there's plenty.
If I may also add, on solar, the Director Gondwe has re-emphasized, in other parts of the world, what is happening that at a household level, you get your solar panel, you generate that power, you can feed it into the grid, and you get paid for that. So it is our hope that in these conversations going forward, we'll move towards that direction. If people realize that they can get some income out of harvesting that solar, it will go a long way. So it will save them if you generate enough that you can use at home, and the surplus you can sell, you can make some money. Who wouldn't want to do that? So it's in these conversations that we're having as a ministry with other stakeholders that we're exploring all those opportunities to help people move towards that direction. And
just to advise our public, those who are building houses, take time to ask the architects how to orient your house, so that should this kick in the future, then you'll have money being spun from your house.
Quite an interesting perspective there from the director. And,
indeed.
Yeah, interesting indeed. And just to also get ourselves going, we are also reflecting on the World Environment Day, we know. But there are these factors that we cannot ignore as we reflect on this coming day event that will be commemorating as a country as we join the global community. Now, we look at these issues, for instance, when we talk about the agriculture sector and climate change. We've been faced with two incidents, which are sometimes we have droughts, in other circumstances we have floods.
Yes.
And as during the 2021-2022 farming season, we also had heat waves.
Yes.
So, what does that mean, and what should we reflect on as a country when we talk about climate change? Because people may not appreciate when we're just talking about climate change. They say, what is this animal climate change?
Thank you so much. That's a problem for all, and we must share what we know, and we must take interest, because the problem is much deeper than we have looked at it. Okay? It's not just the droughts and then the floods. It's when climate is changing, it means all the ideas you had to invest in when the climate was sufficiently taking care of you, or it was on your side, are gone. You must think twice. You must have brand new ideas to deal with a new situation. I'll try to give an example. Okay, rain is expected to fall from November and up to April. Then it decides to come in December or January, and it stops in February. What happens to the crop? It means now the scientists must start researching on how to change the crop behavior so that it conforms to that weather pattern and gives you the product. So you see that it's not just that crop. How many crops are we talking about? All the crops.
All the crops, yes.
It's a big job. It will drain the resources of the country. Okay? So we must rally. When we hear these things, we must begin to think as to what can we do. It's a big problem. The climate change is coming in where it's the weather patterns known, and one decade passes, oh, it's the same pattern. Another decade, same pattern. And then you know, okay, this is our weather. But suddenly, in that decade, there are changes. Another decade comes, there are changes. It constitutes climate change.
your perspective.
Yes. So also to add on the issues to do with climate change, you will note that under the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, through a project we're calling Pilot Program for Climate Resilience, we are running a campaign that is dubbed Think 2044. I'm sure a number of people across the country have seen vehicles that are labeled Think 2044.
Why should we think 2024?
So there is a reason why that particular campaign is called Think 2044. There has been scientific finding in the climate change sphere that has found that in the year 2044, in particular for Zambia, we are likely to have the country being divided in one part, the southern part of the country having droughts, while the northern part will have floods. So it's reawakening people. That campaign is meant to reawaken people to realize that if we do not change the way we do things, the impact might be huge. So we have to look at mitigation measures. How do we mitigate against the challenge of climate change? And if that problem basis, how do we adapt? So it's to look at all these spheres, being able to repair this challenge, being able to change our mind, the way of doing things, to be able to address the problem or to lessen the impact of climate change. And at the same time, being realistic that if the challenge were to increase, the problems were to increase, we should be able to withstand this problem.
Recently, we were talking about the strategic plan, or should be a communication strategy.
National Climate Change Communication and the Advocacy Strategy.
Yes, which you were launching.
Yes.
But people have argued, Mr. Siwamba, there that the Zambian government does a good job when it comes to formulating these documents. But when it comes to implementing them, it's something else, because your document, for instance, is not reaching the people of Kuku compound. And that becomes a concern, Director, because that people who are supposed to be abreast. And the good part with that strategy, when I was reading through some of the statements, you indicated that you are going to translate it in 7 languages. But when are people going to see results of such a strategy, and how are you trying to popularize it?
Thank you very much. And the area you're asking me about how we can engage Cabinet TV and others. And the one interesting aspect about the launch of the National Climate Change Communication and the Advocacy Strategy, that we launched it on 3rd May to signify the great importance we attach to the media, the appreciation that we have of the media as partners in us addressing challenges of climate change. And I'm glad that you're giving us that feedback that we have to go out there. Of course, documents can be done, very beautiful, colorful. But at the end of the day, what is important is implementation, implementation, and implementation. If you do not implement, it means your ideas are going in vain. They're not going to realize the full potential or the objective. And in that respect, you will recall that during the launch of the National Climate Change Communication and Advocacy Strategy, the Honorable Minister was very emphatic and challenged us, especially those of us who are working in the communication units at the ministry, to ensure that we disseminate information to all Zambians, to all the people that are living on the Zambian soil within this jurisdiction. And we'll be rolling out a number of activities, including radio, TV, interviews, engagements, documentaries. We have already started working on some of the documentaries. We also intend to have roadshows in various parts of the country to sensitize the people, to join hands with their government for us to address this problem of climate change. And what you have raised, I think, is very cardinal. We really recognize that each and everyone should have access to this information. We should be able to implement the content of that strategy to the letter. And of course, it may not be everyone who has access to a TV. It may not be everyone who has access to a radio, who may have access to a phone for them to be able to see things on Facebook, WhatsApp, or other medium of communication. And therefore, we want to go on the ground, engage the people in their own localities, engage the traditional leaders, because we realize the important role that our traditional leaders play, firstly in galvanizing their people, helping to change the thinking of their people, and also giving us in ministries ideas or feedback. So we will engage traditional leaders, we will engage religious leaders, leaders of churches and faith-based organizations. The artists, the musicians, they are very good and important players. These are influencers in our society. So as a ministry, we are putting up measures to ensure that we are all encompassing. We ensure that we engage people across the wide spectrum.
Interesting. Director, do you want to add to other perspective?
Well, it's communication. And
because whatever you do as a
exactly.
director, at the end of the day, if it is not reaching the people,
I understand. And then when we blow the population into fragments of who knows what language, then you begin to see that yes, we have this strategy, but it will not be done in a day. So we need to deal with groups. Okay, those that speak this, for instance, Tonga, then we have to translate to that, and so on and so forth. So, and if the strategy is not well done, you end up just finishing your time translating. And not, so that's why Mr. Silwamba has talked about some activities ongoing, while the translation is also being done.
Yeah, interesting, because you may be wondering sometimes, you say, how do you say global warming in Tonga, in Bemba? Those are issues that tend to emerge. So what is global warming? So all those things tend to be too technical, and sometimes people think matters to do with the climate change and should be left to Director GONDWE and Mr. Silwamba. But people forget that these are cross-cutting issues that affect our daily lives, because climate change and environment are cross-cutting issues. Talking about cross-cutting issues, how is the ministry, for instance, making sure that it provides policy guidance, especially to various ministries? Let's say the Ministry of Infrastructure Development. Yes, when you talk about road, we have seen other countries that are industrialized a lot now, talking about making their roads climate smart, climate responsive. What strategic guidance are you giving to these other ministries?
I can begin on that one. Yes, the ministries are encouraged by our head of state not to work in silos. And that's why our ministry participates in committees which are in other ministries and so on and so forth. Then also we begin with the 8th National Development Plan when it comes on. Just as the 7th was, there were clusters. So where ideas are shared and so on and so forth. Then permanent secretaries are connected. Yes. So there is no ministry that will champion its cause on its own. So just be assured on that. So our role now is to ensure that if activities are being implemented, say infrastructure, then we quote them and guide them that there is this interest we have. The infrastructure you're going to put there are climate smart, they are green, and so on and so forth. So we move slowly. And right now I'm happy to tell you that the architects that we have, the modern ones now, are already conversant. There is even a concept called the green construction. So you can imagine. So there it's already sown and it's growing. And we want this to happen in each and every sector. Agriculture, they know. Now you hear of climate smart agriculture.
Yes.
Okay. So that's how we've been working. So it's a question of now seeing the fruits coming in. The message has been planted.
Interesting.
Yeah. So to add to what Director GONDWE has indicated, infrastructure. If you're building a tall building, for instance, remember when I spoke about the Zambia Meteorological Department, I mentioned that they have a huge input even to construction, the buildings. If you are building a very tall building, high rise or whatever, consult the Zambia Meteorological Department. He will be able to advise you that in such an area where you want to build a structure, there will be strong winds that pass there. So if you do not take that into consideration, you will realize that you've invested millions of kwacha, and a year down the road, the building collapses. You will have lost your money. So it is advisable to the investors and honorary Zambians, reach out to the Zambia Meteorological Department. It is going to guide you. It's not just about the weather forecast that you see on TV or you hear about on radio. There are also all these very fundamental issues they deal with, which can help save you money.
Talking about the weather forecast, others have also argued to say sometimes it's not as accurate. Have you done enough? Are you reinvesting in the weather department before that? They are more precise, especially in specific districts and specific areas. Have you done the right investment, or are you working on that?
I can answer that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in fact, for the past 10 years, there is tremendous improvement. You know, weather forecasting needs to be done with correct representation. So the weather stations must be placed in such a way that they are able to speak to a smaller area, mm-hmm. and this can be connected to the next area and to the next area and so on and so forth. So far, the way we have had our weather stations, the density has been quite low. But we've been having, this must be the third project so far that has brought in some money to invest in automatic weather stations and so on. So that is ongoing. Give it another 10 years, we expect things to improve. And so far, so good. The weather forecasting has improved slightly if we compare it to the 60s.
Interesting. As we come towards the conclusion of our discussion, Mr. Sirwamba, I want you to just emphasize what the people of Zambia should expect, especially as we mark World Environment Day, which falls on the 5th, but in Zambia it will be marked on the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Soko. May I pass that question to Director Gondwe, is the owner of this baby,
mm-hmm.
the World Environment Day. You'll be able to attend to that question. But before I do that, I don't know if
yes.
you can give me a second to just talk about the accuracy of weather information and things like that. There's a very interesting story that I wish we could arrange for Kama TV to have a conversation, for instance, with the Zambia Meteorological Department. You will realize that they have information from about 1800 or somewhere there. It's one of the oldest of rich history about this weather, the weather information. It will be a very interesting story, and I'm sure that our viewers will really appreciate that history. Now, and having said that, presently there are plans to automate most of these weather stations to ensure that we get real time and from many parts of the country. Of course, people have said they will raise the issues here and there, but do you realize that the Zambia Meteorological Department is the one that feeds the entire world with the information that is acquired? So what is strange, unfortunately, that people would rather believe another source of that information, not realizing that it's coming from the Zambia Meteorological Department.
Yes.
So is the source of information from all parts of Zambia on weather comes from the Zambia Meteorological Department under the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. So it is worthy for us to acknowledge and appreciate our own, because even the information that you get from all these apps from outside, they come from us at the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment.
Interesting. Director,
what would you like me to talk about?
So you were talking about your winding remarks regarding the World Environment Day.
Excellent. This is one day, one shot in a year, but we need partners to be with us, because with such a forum, that's where we exchange knowledge, we exchange information, and we need also to build partnerships so that we can now rally together in implementing all the programs that are necessary for us to protect the environment and conserve natural resources.
Interesting. Well, our dear viewers, we've come to the end of our discussion. We were in conversation with the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment officials, and in the studio I was joined by Mr. FISHANI Godwin Gondwe, the Director Environment Management, that department there. And we also had Chibabula Sirwamba, who is the Communication Officer from the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. Quite a rare topic we've been having on the People's Verdict today, and be sure to join us as we come with another interesting episode of the program. Stay tuned to Kamne TV. Remember, Kamne TV is not just another channel.